Hi, my name is Becky Jennings, and this is the Responsible Parenting Podcast. I give you the transformational tools to stop reacting to your children in the moment and start responding with intention.
Do you find yourself locked in a daily power struggle with your child? Do you fall back into old patterns like yelling or threatening just to stop the annoying behavior? Are you desperate to learn how to connect with your kids, set boundaries, heck, gain some cooperation? If this is you, you need to check out my community. Inside my community, you'll have access to my signature Strong-Willed Language course, where you learn how to regulate yourself, understand and speak your strong-willed kids' language to virtually eliminate the constant power struggles. You'll have access to my workshop library, giving you step-by-step strategies for sibling rivalry, listening, anger and aggression, emotional regulation, and more. You'll have weekly Q&A opportunities to get personalized answers on challenging situations. You'll get specific strategies for you based on exactly what's going on in your home. No umbrella strategy, no umbrella script, no bots. You'll get a personalized roadmap to support you. Plus, you'll get dozens of bite-sized lessons to regroup, stay on track, and stay motivated. It is time to stop walking on eggshells around your children and finally experience the release you are looking for. Join the community today and let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Responsible Parenting. I'm your host, Becky Jennings, and I am recording from a very, very rainy day today. I just kind of love the sound of rain on the skylight. I think it is just so calming. Let's just hope that the skylight holds and we don't end up with a gigantic bubble that I've had to pop multiple times. We have an old roof. We have a very old roof, and we're not going to do much about it until we remodel. So up until now, we got buckets and towels, but I still love the sound. Even though it comes with a little bit of cleaning up sometimes, which is kind of actually, didn't realize, but a good segue into the discussion today. And it's something that I've noticed across my clients, across the members inside of my community. This recurring theme that has been happening in the new year is losing our cool when things don't go according to plan, losing our cool when it doesn't work out exactly as we thought it would, or there's a little bit of a hiccup, or things are slower, or we're not getting the response from a spouse that we were hoping for. We're not getting the support we were hoping for. And we end up finding ourselves in unexpected conflicts, unexpected power struggles, just like this unexpected throw us off our game. Like, what? Why is this happening right now? Like it was going so well. We were almost out the door and then you changed your entire outfit, or we were almost out the door and then you tripped and fell. And now we have a huge meltdown, which is causing me anxiety because I need to get out the door. I need to go to work. And it doesn't seem like my spouse is even noticing that I'm running around the house, frantic, trying to get all this done. And even if I ask for help, they're not moving at the speed that I want. So I'm noticing across the board that we're struggling a little bit with what to do when things don't go according to plan. Isn't that just life, right? We can, and I notice I do this all the time. Like, we're trying to adopt a puppy. Well, I'm trying to adopt a puppy. My kids are trying to adopt a puppy. We're trying to convince the husband that a puppy would be great right now. We'll see how that goes. Anyways, last night, as I'm trying to go to sleep, all I could think about was like the future of what this puppy would look like and all the things we'd need to do and, the supplies and the routine. And it's like, it's crazy how fast we can plan perfectly, plan it all out. But what happens when things don't go according to plan? I think there's a couple things happening right here. Number one, we find a lot of safety internally when we control the situation, especially if you have a ton of plates spinning in the air at all times. To feel like we are in control of the situation, we know every spinning plate, what its purpose is, how fast it needs to spin, when it needs to stop spinning, when it needs to be dropped off. We know all of these things. Our mental load is enormous. And so when one plate falls off and we can start to see the cascade of events, which we know are bound to happen because we've seen this story before, it can really derail us and it can make us feel out of control. And oftentimes when we feel out of control, we feel unsafe. And whatever your childhood upbringing was, when we feel unsafe, we have coping strategies that we immediately access because those neural pathways are so strong that when we are stressed, when we are overwhelmed, our brains are going to go back to those default patterns much, much, much faster because it takes a tremendous amount of mental energy and capacity to slow down. It takes a tremendous amount of mental energy and capacity to choose the new neural pathway that you are focused on building. And it's a lot of effort to take that new neural pathway from start to finish and build that repetition. Just like going to the gym for the very first time, your body is so sore after 1, 2, 3, 4 sessions. But after you've been there for a month, after you've been there for 2 months, you're not as sore because you're stronger, right? It's the exact same thing with the neural pathways that we're trying to create. But it's hard to do. Like if you go to the gym when you're sick, you can't perform at the same level. Think about that when we're trying to create a new neural pathway. When we're stressed, the same functionality that we have when we're not stressed in our brain, we can't access. So we immediately go back to these default patterns, which are our old coping strategies, which is what we used to do up until this time when we're trying to do something different to be better. We will go to those old coping strategies, which is usually yelling, which is usually losing our ever-loving minds, which is threatening, which is, just forcing our control over the situation in order to just get it done, no matter what cost, no matter how many hurt feelings. And so it's really hard in the moment. So when things don't go according to plan, it can really pull on our trigger, our emotional unhealed zones of feeling out of control and destabilized. And in those moments, what did we do in the past? What did we do in the past to regain control? Well, we tried to assert control over anything we could in the moment. We tried to assert our control in other areas. I know for me, when I was a kid and I felt out of control, I developed an eating disorder because that was one thing that I could control. I could fully control what went into my body. And so for 11 years, that was my sole focus of control. It's the same thing now, except now we are trying to exert healthy coping strategies. Obviously, anorexia was not a healthy coping strategy for my lack of control. So how can I feel in control? There's a couple things we can do here. Number one, we need to create off the mat practices that help fill these buckets up so that in the heat of the moment, when we are on the mat in the middle of the chaos, we have the filled up buckets. We have the capacity to be able to tolerate those. So off the moment practices are regulation practices. Off the moment practices are figuring out pockets of your day that you have full control over that give you that satisfaction of being in control. Off the mat practices is practicing with your kid in a calm scenario of getting out the door. Pick the 3 or 4 things that cause a lot of tension in your house and practice them. Practice them in funny, silly ways. Practice them in lighthearted, creative ways. Get your kids buy-in, get your kids ideas. Let's practice, because the more we practice in play, the more readily accessible they are in our brains, because they are wired with a positive image. They are wired with a positive association. So when we can wire these seemingly stressful moments with positive practice, when we hit the stressful moment, our bodies are primed to know what to do instead of going to the old coping strategies. We actually really need to do this on a regular basis. Our brains think in like black and white. Oftentimes there's not a lot of gray area, especially with our children. Our children only think in black and white. There is no middle ground for them. It's yes or no, it's black or white. So what we need to do is we need to give our brain a second option. So right now, when it comes to overwhelm and stress and feeling out of control when things don't go according to plan, the one thing that our brain knows is how to fall back on our old coping strategies that don't serve anybody and don't move the needle forward in progressing our responsive parenting process, right? So what we get to do is we get to show our brain a second option. When we show our brain a second option, now our brain sees that we have choice. There's not just this black and white thing where when things go off the rails, I respond with yelling and threats. Now it says, oh, there's also this other option over here that actually feels better in my body, that actually is more enjoyable, that actually creates the better outcome. And that's actually more fun and connected and playful. So our brain now has a second option. So we get to practice that second option with our kids, with ourselves off the mat. And when we can practice it, our body then starts to see that this is the go-to strategy. Ways that you can practice with your kids is you can get them down, you can sit them down and say like, oh my gosh, have you noticed that like every single morning we get in a fight? Like that's not fun at all. I don't know about you, but I feel bad and I bet you feel bad and we end up yelling at each other. It stinks. So I'm curious. I'm wondering what we could do that's a little bit different, that might feel better for you. Should we be characters every single morning? Like we pick our favorite TV character or book character and we act like them all morning? Should we set out our clothes the night before, pick our breakfast the night before so that we don't have to make all these choices in the morning when we're really tired and maybe a little cranky? And then let's pretend at 4 p.m. that it's morning. Isn't that so silly? Let's do this right after school when we get home. Let's practice. There's really fun ways. There's so many different strategies, and actually, I'll link in the show notes. I wrote out 70 different starter phrases that are all based in attachment play that you can start to access when you're like, I don't know. I'm at a loss for words. Like, I don't even know. Like a couple nights ago, my son came into our bedroom at like, I don't know, 1:30, something like that. And we were all not feeling great. I was still recovering. I had a rough night's sleep coughing. And anytime, you wake up and you're coughing, then you can't go back to sleep because now you're coughing again. So I was just a little annoyed that I was now awake and now I was coughing. And he really, really just wasn't, things were not going according to plan. And I really just wanted him to go back to bed so that I could go back to bed. And instead of using my authority, instead of forcing him back into bed with like an aggressive, get back into bed. I'm so tired. Like, come on, buddy. I said, I feel like this situation needs a little magic. You're having a hard time going to bed. What could be a magic spell that we could use to help us go back to bed? And he climbed up and he started thinking about the magic spell. And then he went back to bed and I went back to bed. And we stayed connected and he was motivated to think about that. So it was a way to infuse play, connection, a strategy when things were definitely not going according to plan. And I think the hard, tricky part is we need to look a little further. Yes, the strategies are super helpful. Yes, the practice is super helpful. All of these are tools that we can use to help us in the moment. But the real root that we need to get down into is, why do we feel chaos, panic? Why do we feel dysregulation when things don't go according to plan? When control feels like it's slipping through our fingers? What is it about that? And only you can do that journaling, and I can help you obviously through the process and help guide you to your own understanding of that through coaching and all of those programs that I have. But it's really figuring out where this started. What was the moment that feels very similar to this from your past that really draws this out from you? And what part of that is unhealed? And how can we go back and give that part some attention? Can we go back and focus on that and give that some more context, give that some more support? Talk to that part of your body and validate that, yeah, that was not okay. Yes, makes total sense that you feel this way. And it's only until we figure out the root of why we feel so chaotic when we lose control or when things don't go according to plan that we can start to actually utilize the tools. Because we can give you scripts and you can use all 70 of the playful strategies. But unless we start to address why we feel the way we feel, it's going to keep popping up in just different scenarios across the day. Different scenarios with our children, our spouse, our coworkers, whatever. So it's really when things don't go according to plan, how can we create a sense of safety inside of ourselves so that we know that, yes, things aren't going according to plan. And at the same exact time, I know that I am safe. And at the same time, I can use a grounding tool. And at the same time, I can look for ways to infuse comfort, which is generally connection and play, into this moment so it doesn't feel as tense, so that it doesn't feel as painful. And then we can start to really dial in and root down and connect the dots as to why this makes me feel the way it does. And then once we understand why, we can really start to create those systems that help support you to create that new neural pathway. So we're not constantly defaulting back to this old way of thinking.
When dealing with frustrating behavior, yelling can quickly become our default way of handling things. But since you're listening to this podcast, I know you're looking for a better way. That's why I created my free guide to help you get out of the yelling cycle. This 6-part free guide gives you the foundational information to start breaking the toxic yelling cycle. Click the link in my show notes to get your free guide today. This might be the hardest cycle to break as parents, but I have your back, and together we can change the way we respond.
So I hope that really helps give some clarity to why we react the way we react when things don't go according to plan, and what we can start to do on our responsive parenting journey to bring us back into that authentic alignment towards ourselves, to who we actually want to be. Because I know you don't want to be that parent who is screaming at their kids every single morning, but just you find yourself there and you're like, what happened? I'm trying so hard. It's because we need to root down and figure out why. And once we figure out why, then we can start to figure out all of the other moving pieces around it that really support and scaffold those moments so they are not so tricky, so they're not so painful, so that you have the tools, but ultimately you don't feel so shaken on the inside from the jump. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And if you do have any questions and you're curious about how I do this with coaching, let's please book a call. We will talk about it. The call is completely free. I would really, really love to connect with you. So shoot me an email. Let me know if you would like to do that. And I will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Responsible Parenting Podcast. If you like what you heard, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. If you know someone who would benefit from this podcast, I'd be honored if you'd share this episode with them. Until next time, know that you are enough, you are capable, you've made it through all of your hardest days, and we will keep growing on this parenting journey together. This podcast was produced by Kim Kelty and myself, Becky Jennings, and edited by the Kelty Method, Branding and Podcasting.